Welcome back to My Spoonie Sisters, where we spotlight the raw realities, strength, and soul of chronic illness warriors across the globe. Today's guest is the definition of audacious, a healer, a fighter, and an educator with a heart that refuses to quit. Meet Mallory Carlson, an acupuncturist of nearly 12 years and a chronic pain patient for over 16. She's been navigating debilitating migraines and women's health concerns with incredible resilience, all while holding space for others to heal. Lately, her purpose has begun to shift. She's feeling called to move away from hands-on care and lean into educating and empowering others through her platform, The Audacious Patient. Mallory is also a fantasy-loving bookworm, a theme party enthusiast, a lover of nature walks and beach days, bonfires and game nights with friends, and of course, she's a cat mom to Hazel, her 15-year-old snuggle queen. Mallory brings honesty, depth, and a refreshing dose of humor to her advocacy, and we're so excited to have her on the show. We also have our co-hosts Andy Byers and Linnea Knisley. Welcome, welcome. Mallory, thank you for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey into acupuncture and what initially drew you to this healing path?
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. Well, I have always been really drawn to holistic healing in general, particularly that kind of blends kind of left brain and right brain thinking, kind of a more factual, pragmatic with a more creative, spiritual kind of thinking. So acupuncture felt like a really good fit. I actually dove into acupuncture school before I ever even had acupuncture before. I just kind of made it an intuitive decision that it was the avenue for me. So it was kind of happenstance, but it ended up being a really good match for me.
What's it been like balancing your role as a healer while also being someone who lives with chronic pain yourself?
A real challenge, honestly. It's some days better than others, of course, as is the roller coaster of chronic pain. But for the most part, I've found it to be helpful in my role as a healer because I am able to relate and understand people's experience of pain in a much deeper way than if I just was an outsider who just had the healer's hands, right? And didn't experience it myself. But certainly the days where I have to go in with a migraine are tough. I'm lucky enough to have a boss who also struggles with migraines. So there is a lot of compassion in my workplace when that does happen. But it doesn't make it any less hard because I try to push through if I can. And at the same time, it can actually be helpful to just be able to go into the clinic and be focused on other people, period, rather than my own pain and my own issues. So it's a mixed bag, but mostly I find it to be helpful.
I can see how having a chronic illness and what you do would be actually probably very helpful for the patient and you, because you both can see you're not alone in this. My own primary is a doctor, has a chronic illness. I love having a doctor. You've been living with migraines for 16 years. How have they evolved over time and impacted your day-to-day life?
It's really had quite an up and down evolution. So it started out kind of slow, and it started out when I was in acupuncture school. I think, just being a student hunched over books and computers and sitting in a classroom for, 8 hours a day, whatever. I think brought it on slowly. I do think it is definitely musculoskeletal rooted. Because of that, it progressively got worse over the course of a few years where I, started getting them 3 or 4 times a week. And that's, where I'm totally throwing up and just cannot function until I did find a doctor who she kind of was like, I don't really know what to do for migraines. I was like, well, it's very musculoskeletal rooted. She's like, well, let's try some muscle relaxers. And so I did, and it did really help. I took muscle relaxers pretty religiously for about 6 months, which is longer than I would like to have, but got to a point where I stopped taking them. And now, ever since that was probably 7, 8 years ago, ever since I've come down to migraines maybe once a month. So big difference, but they are still just as debilitating when they come on. And even if I don't go into like a full migraine much more than once a month, I still more frequently can feel like I'm edging toward a flare up, I need to self-care so I don't go down that path much more frequently than that.
You mentioned a migraine hangover that can last into the next day. Can you describe what that feels like and how you navigate it?
Yeah. Absolutely. When I get migraines, I'm typically waking up with them, and I've kind of been able to expedite my migraine experience just because I know how they are. So if I wake up with a little bit of neck pain, just a little bit of a kink in the neck, I know I have to get out of bed right now or I'm going to be throwing up in 3 hours. However, most of the time I do start moving around, and I get my pain patch on, I get my heat on, I take some ibuprofen, I do whatever stretch. And usually I end up having to throw up before then it passes, or I'm able to kind of lay down again and it can pass. So then the rest of the day, typically after that, once the worst of it is over, the hangover is very like, I'm still achy, I still have the muscle aches, but not as bad. And I'm very hazy, foggy, can't concentrate, I'm starving. It's really not dissimilar from an alcohol hangover, I will say.
It's absolutely terrible. It is.
Mm,
I've experienced it myself, and I think a lot of people have. And yeah, I think you do a great job of putting into words what it feels like. For me, I think I'm always telling people, like, give me no sound, no light, no movement. Just let me be in a really dark room and go away.
Yep. Yep. I have found actually though that for me, I need that for that period of time where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm sick, and then I just was sick. Now I need to relax and let it pass. But once I'm over the worst of it, I actually have to get up and move. I have to get out and move. Otherwise, it won't pass. Like motion is lotion, right? Like even just a gentle walk, even just whatever, like putting dishes in the dishwasher, just basic, just moving around the house can be helpful. But it is all about timing. You can't, because if I try to push it, it's not going to be good. But if I don't try to get myself, out of it at a certain point, it's also not good. So it's learning how to read your body, which is not easy.
Absolutely. And I think those that suffer with migraines, they get to know their body better through time, and they know what works for them and what doesn't. My husband had his first migraine last year. And as he kept describing how he was feeling, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're having a migraine. Like, here's an ice pack. Go lay down. Stop trying to do all the things you're trying to do. And I went to check on him 10 minutes later, and he was passed out on the bed, ice pack on his neck and everything. And it worked. But some people, if they've never experienced that, they have no idea.
You don't know what's going on or how to manage it. Yeah.
I've taken all the ibuprofen. I've done all the things. Why is the headache not going away? Well, because it's not a headache.
Yep. More.
Yeah.
Can we just pivot for a second? So living in chronic pain can kind of make you feel like you're going bonkers because it's not something that other people can see. So how has living with chronic pain influenced your mental health?
It can kind of be a mind game. You can kind of start to wonder if your needs are too much, if it's and the isolation that can come with it, right? Like if you've got a migraine, you're not going to hang out with your friends. You can't go to work. And isolation is definitely where a lot of that you kind of get trapped in your own head and start overthinking and start to all you can see is your pain or your isolation or fixate on things because if you're in this kind of negative physical state, your brain's going to go there too. Maybe not all the time, but more easily, maybe we'll say that. So it can be difficult if you can't get up. I mean, I'm definitely somebody, I can't just sit at home and do nothing and feel good about it. Generally, once in a while, cool, great. Yes, I love rest. But if I'm literally just stuck at home, like I will totally start to spin out and get in my head about stuff. Chronic pain can really take a toll. And as it affects your relationships, I've had to cancel so many plans because with my friends or things that I wanted to do because I just couldn't. And luckily I have really cultivated a really supportive group of friends, some of who do also deal with chronic pain and others who are just compassionate people and they understand and they know that I'm not canceling because I want to, whatnot. But definitely there's guilt that goes along with that. And that guilt can feed into the struggles. So it's a multi-layered thing for sure.
It is multi-layered. I think that sometimes the heaviest part that we carry is the guilt of saying I can't. And we were just talking about it last week of the I can't, but being able to say I can't for reasons that care for you so that you can later. But the guilt part it's the silent echo that lives rent free in your mind. But I just told so and so no. And what if they think this because I can't? Or if I say no again this time, they'll stop inviting me places because they automatically assume that my answer is no. But then you carry guilt for saying yes when you know that you should have said no. And I think that's the misconception. People don't see that part, that you carry guilt for saying yes to showing up for someone that wasn't you when you knew that you didn't feel well. What are some of your key coping mechanisms? How do you talk yourself down?
I have developed good internal introspective tools in regards to that, namely just self-compassion, right? I treat myself as if I would treat a girlfriend or anybody. Or a patient, if I have a patient come in and they're crying because they can't go to work or they, whatever it is, I pat them on the shoulder and I'm going to say, you are doing everything you can. I just very much mother myself, and that really eases it. Speaking to my inner child too, like the inner child who was told like you're not doing enough or you are too much, or all the things that we have deep seated. Speaking to that, because it's that part of you that often is the part of you that is having those conflicted feelings. So I just be very gentle with myself. And when I can't, my partner does it for me. I'm very lucky, very, very lucky to have a very supportive partner. So that's kind of what I lean on.
So you talked a little bit when we talked to you about feeling dismissed in medical settings. What has that experience been like? And how have you learned to advocate for yourself when you feel like you're not being heard in those spaces?
Good question. So I have been dismissed with the migraine piece, to an extent. I haven't sought an abundance of care from Western providers other than getting those muscle relaxers at one point. Because I work in the field that I do, I've really kind of leaned on that. So the migraines they just kind of get like, they're brought up and then disregarded. Where I felt the gaslighting piece much more is the women's health piece experience that I've had. It's struggling with issues where walking in, doctors are like, I literally have never seen this before. I have no idea. Your only option is surgery, but I don't know who's going to do that for you because it's such a sensitive thing that you are probably just going to you either have to like deal with some serious lifelong risks or just deal with continuing to have this issue. And that has been so painful. I stopped seeking care for years because I was like, nobody can help me. You just end up feeling unhelpable. You just have to suffer. And it's terrible. It's a terrible feeling. I finally have found a doctor who the first time I went and saw her, she was like, oh yeah, I've seen that before. I just dealt with that last week. We're cool. Like I got a plane for you. We're all good. And oh my God, I cannot tell you how amazing that was to feel. And this was only recently. This was within the last 6 months that I found this doctor. So the fact that it took me, I've had this particular issue for probably 13, 14 years now. And finally, it took me that long to find somebody who knows what's up. So the dismissal is very painful. We'll just say that.
And it feels so good when they get what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Even better when they struggle with the same thing and they can say, oh, you need to do this, this, and this. I remember going to the emergency room one time because a migraine had gotten so bad and my husband was worried. They were like, oh yeah, we deal with this all the time. I've got the perfect cocktail for you. And I was like, wow, okay, I think I'm in good hands. Yeah. And that's such a great feeling because who wants to go ask for help and feel you're getting dismissed or ignored or blown off? No, you want the people that get it, that see you for who you are and have the exact advice, tips, and what to do. Even if it's not just medication, if it's other things too. Give me all the things. I want to know it all. What you can do to make me feel better, please bring it all.
Right. It's really is traumatizing, right? It was fully braced when it was going into this doctor's appointment, this most recent one who finally gets it. Before I had met her, I was going into the appointment fully braced to be told, can't help you, sorry, And after I left, I I kept telling my boyfriend all day, I was like, I keep feeling like I'm having like brain glitches because like my brain couldn't compute that somebody could actually help me. Like I just had to like continuously shudder and just like let my body have that very visceral reaction, or a somatic reaction rather, because it was such a shock to the system. And I was able to release that trauma that I had been carrying. Obviously I wasn't able to release 16 years or whatever it was of trauma in that moment, but it was just such a physical experience, the act of being seen and finding someone who can take care of you.
Now, what do you wish that providers understood better about migraines and chronic pain?
There's just no one size fits all answer. I feel like in Western medicine, they go headache's a headache, a migraine's a migraine. In a lot of cases, in Chinese medicine, it's not like that at all. It's all about patterns, and, we can kind of get to diagnoses based on the specific symptoms that you're having, because not all migraines look or feel exactly the same. And so being able to differentiate a little bit in terms of how you treat, and also being super mindful of how you're communicating with patients. I've had patients come in my office and be like, I had a doctor tell me, you are in such bad health, you could go to sleep and not wake up the next morning. So the patient didn't go to bed, didn't want to go to sleep for a week because she was so scared. Like these kinds of things, like being super mindful of the way you're wording things, because they have such an impact on the person who's hearing them, on the person who's coming to you for help. I think that's the biggest thing, because chronic pain is chronic. It often doesn't go away, unfortunately. But care is as much the physical piece as it is the emotional piece. And I think that gets lost a lot in the system.
You've built an impressive self-care toolkit. Can you walk us through some of the things that help you the most?
Man, I have so many things that I do. Anytime a migraine hits, I grab the topical creams, the pain patches, the heating pad, ibuprofen. I do have a small stash of muscle relaxers that I just save for when I really, really need them. What else do? I have a TENS unit. That's been huge. That has been really, really helpful. Cannabis is really, really helpful, particularly for like the muscle pain and the nausea piece. What else do? Just stretching and gentle movement, going for a little walk, getting a little physical movement in, but not pressuring myself to go bust out a hard workout. That's too much in those moments, but just something, being able and learning how to listen to your body, I think is such a huge piece. Because like you said before, when it's a new experience, you don't understand what's happening or how to navigate it. Now, 15 years later, I'm still knocked over by it often enough, but I can expedite the experience and recover within a couple hours. Whereas in the past, it might have been a couple of days.
With the TENS unit, where do you place it to help with something like that?
My issues are very much, I have just persistent knots around my right shoulder blade. So I usually focus it around there. You got to be real careful with the TENS unit. If you put it too close to your neck in certain ways, it can just pull your, which is just, it kind of mimics the spasm of a migraine. So it can have the opposite effect when it kind of snaps your neck, together. To your shoulder. But otherwise, typically I do it further down on the back, because even when I'm having the pain up in my neck and head, I know that the root of it is further down. And so if I can get those muscles to relax, everything up the chain is good.
Hey, listeners, are you living with a chronic illness and want to make your voice heard? Rare Patient Voice connects patients and caregivers with research opportunities so you can share your experiences and get paid for your time. Your insights help drive real change in healthcare. So sign up today using the link in our show notes and start making an impact. Okay. I've never even thought to try one for a migraine, so I've used it for everything else.
I mean, it certainly depends on where your migraines are coming from, right? If it's not a musculo-based one, if it's more vasodilation where you're getting too much blood to your head, all of a sudden, it's not necessarily going to have the same effect. But if there's a muscle piece, it's super helpful.
Worth a shot.
Mm-hmm.
With so many tools and strategies, how do you know when to lean into one versus rest and do less?
I've developed a protocol. I know if I do the thing where I wake up with that neck pain, I got to do everything I can I throw everything at it. Usually it doesn't culminate until I actually throw up, and then I lay back down, or I sit. I prop myself up and sit with the heating pad, with all the things that I can. But then once I wake up from that nap after that, that's when I know it's rest time. We take it easy today. Don't push it. Prior to a migraine, if I feel one starting to come on, often I'll feel the ache come on in the evening, but then the actual migraine doesn't come on until the mornings. And in those cases, I might be getting that TENS unit out. I might be getting, a Theracane out, doing some self massage, whatever it is. I very rarely have nothing going on here. Like in terms of, I usually have a pain patch or something because it is so chronic. But knowing when to rest and knowing when to push it is definitely it's a matter of experience and learning how to read your body and knowing how your specific pain experience progresses once it begins.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Audacious patient? What inspired you to create it? What's the mission behind it? What's it all about?
Absolutely. I started the Audacious patient. Honestly, it came out of rage. It came out of seeing all of the injustices in the system, all of the cracks that people fall through, all of the debt that people become saddled with, and wanting better for people, for everyone as well as myself, and making it accessible and making it almost fun, right? Like this stuff is so boring, it's so overwhelming, it's daunting, it's gross, it's not sexy. And so if I can make it absorbable, digestible for people, because I just know for myself, I didn't know any of this stuff until I, got into my 30s. I didn't have health insurance. I didn't go to the doctor. I didn't know how to find doctors. I didn't know anything. It's because it's so intentionally confusing and daunting. And now that I'm older and I've been on both sides of it for long enough now and seen so much not go right for people, I want to do what I can to help guide people to get the care that they need and deserve, because the system is so screwed up and we deserve better.
I agree. I love that you have a voice, and I love that that voice is roaring, that you want to change it for the community, because seriously, it's kind of a lot of shenanigans going on. How does shifting away from hands-on patient care, how does that new chapter feel for you? So I'm a nurse by trade, and I went more holistic once my chronic illness journey started to unfold. So I'm more on the holistic side, doing what to say, it started with rage for me as well. I started to hit that gaslighting circle, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm a whole practitioner. I know that you're lying to me. And I've sat in rooms while you lied to other patients, while I understood that real things were happening to them. What does that shift feel like for you? Is it scary and empowering, or not so much scary anymore, but you're like, heck yeah, let's do this because I'm a badass? Like, where are you in that transition?
That's definitely got a mixed answer as well. I would say it's both scary and empowering, and to use your words, more empowering than scary at this point, but definitely, kind of coming out of the treatment room and kind of belting this stuff out loud. There is an intimidation piece, putting yourself out into the world. What if everybody thinks it's stupid or hates it or whatever, which I know that's not going to happen, right? There's just that little voice sometimes that you got to kind of contend with. So there is a bit of that, but for the most part, I just feel so ignited, right? Like just so motivated to help ignite other people.
Yeah.
I don't want people to be specifically avoiding getting care because they don't know how, or they're scared, or they can't afford it or whatever. And so it feels like I'm very excited about the ability to reach and help more people than I can just with one-on-one patient care.
It's powerful. It gives you the tinglies in a good way. Indeed.
So when you're not managing migraines or creating content, where do you find your joy? Hazel stories are encouraged. That is on my note.
Yeah, Hazel definitely is a big stress reliever for me. She's very cuddly. She's very kissy. She's silly. Even though she's 15, she still like runs up and down the stairs screaming opera songs, basically just meowing away. But she also snuggles up and sleeps and whatnot. So she definitely can help kind of bring me back down to earth, calm me down, and make me laugh. Like runs the gamut, right? Otherwise, I love getting outside when I can and spending time with friends. Like you said in the intro, like game nights and bonfires and beach days. I love floating in a lake. And I also like the introverted, like reading my books. And, I like a good balance of, because I would say more on the introvert side of things. So I do definitely like my solo stuff, but I love my friends. I love the people in my life. So I love party games and art nights and all that.
So those are the things that fill your cup in between
sure.
the bad days. So I have to know more about these theme parties you do, and how does that fill your cup? I got to know more details on that.
Yeah, yeah. I love a theme party. My friends and we started doing them a lot during COVID, where, we'd just be like, let's get in the yard and like have a little tiki thing, or like, whatever, whatever little way we could find joy and silliness in a very hard time, right?
Yeah.
So now that life's picked back up again, they're happening a little less frequently, but they still do. And it's kind of, whose ever birthday it is picks the theme or whatnot. We've done glow in the dark parties. We've done country western themes. We've done, like I said, tiki parties.
Which one was your favorite?
I think that's a tough one. I would say the glow in the dark neon one was pretty fun. We had my friend's whole backyard lit up with rope lights and strobe lights and party lights and black light, like everything. So glow
That
sticks,
sounds like
all
fun.
of it.
That would fill my cup too. I can see why you get your cup filled in those.
I was like, I want to glow more than anyone else has ever glowed before. So people just loaded me all up. However, I did feel guilty the next day with all the trash that had accumulated. So I won't be doing that again. That's all one time single use. So I didn't like that piece. But the night of, it was very, very fun.
What's your favorite game? Party game?
There's this very silly one. I don't know, there's probably a name for it, but it's basically, I call it a visual telephone. So everybody has a stack of pages for as many people are in the circle. And on the first page, everybody just writes like a phrase, and it can be anything. And the goal is you pass it to the next person and they will draw whatever you wrote. And then that person will pass it and they have to write what they think you just drew, and so on and so forth, till it comes back to you. And it just never ceases to just make you laugh till you cry.
I love it.
Everybody in the room.
I already
It's
love
so
it.
funny.
Because the things people would be drawing that they thought that I said, I already love it.
It's hilarious.
Have you ever been to or had a murder mystery party?
I haven't. I did get invited to one a couple years ago, and I ended up having COVID, so I wasn't able to go. But I have heard they're really fun. It feels a little intimidating to me, depending on how involved it is. Like if I have to be a whole character, that feels a little bit involved for me. But it depends on the people I'm with and how involved it is.
Well, I can give you all the details. My sister-in-law loves to do themed parties as well. She even did like a whole Survivor themed party in her backyard one time. But then it progressed into murder mysteries. I've attended a few. There's been the Margaritaville one. We did one where we were on a ship, supposedly.
Sure.
And you do have a character, but you can choose how involved you want your character to be. And so I'm crazy, so I do the very involved characters. I was a waitress one time. I had to walk around and make sure everybody had their drinks, but I also had to be very nosy and ask a lot of weird questions. And then we had one where this was probably my favorite. It was Trailer Park Tragedy. And so the trashier, the better. We all had to dress just as trashy as we could. And I got the lovely part of dying. So that was super fun and tragic. Yeah. So I definitely
that sounds fun
to try it. You can there's a website, and you can decide, how many people you're going to have, how big the group is. And then each person can say like how involved they want to be.
Cool. Okay. So it's flexible. Okay. I like that.
It's very flexible, which is great.
Look into that. Yeah.
I want to do an 80s one.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, what advice would you give to someone newly diagnosed and feeling overwhelmed by chronic pain?
I guess I would tell them that They don't have to know everything right now. And it's okay to be gentle with yourself and don't push yourself too hard. I feel we're just so trapped in this culture of productivity is king. And if you're not busy, then you're worthy of whatever. And that's just not the case. It's okay if you don't feel good and you need to rest. I think mostly I would just speak to compassion regarding those cases, self-compassion.
Absolutely. And for those fellow practitioners who also struggle with chronic illness, what message would you like to share with them?
But also you need to have self-compassion, and you are human, and it's okay if you also just can't make it in one day, or if you're just not on all cylinders, and maybe you save your patient notes for the next day because you just can't. Do what you can and trust that when you feel better, you'll be able to do more. Just patience with yourself.
The reminders that the importance of being extremely gentle with yourself. The world is rough enough. They're beating us up. Doctors are
Yep.
giving us the business and not always actively listening. And so I love that the gentle reminders to be gentle with yourself and patient while you're being gentle.
Yeah.
I can't believe that we chatted your ear off and we haven't asked you yet. How can our listeners connect with you and support your work with the
Yes.
Audacious Patient?
Yeah. Certainly finding me on Instagram at the Audacious Patient is a way to keep up with me on a daily, weekly basis. Otherwise, my website has everything, theaudaciouspatient.com. I've got a small library of freebie resources. You need scripts for how to negotiate a medical bill or advocating with doctors or creating a health history template. So it's easier when you do go into a new practitioner for the first time, different sorts of things. I also have a small shop with some low cost resources as well, digital downloads. But those are TikTok. I'm also on TikTok. But yeah, social media and my website are the best places.
And finally, what does being a Spoonie sister mean to you?
It means that you understand. You understand each other. You are able to hold quiet space for people who suffer the same thing as you or their own version of chronic pain or illness, even if it's different from yours. So I guess it's a solidarity and just a quiet knowing, right? Like this world is so loud and we just don't have to be loud, but we just have to be there for each other.
I love that. That was so peaceful.
Yeah,
That was so peaceful.
I really like to balance my Audacious Patient brand is very kind of loud and kind of in your face and whatnot. I kind of jokingly call myself like the sacred punk auntie. I have this loud, rage-filled kind of voice, but it also is backed up by a lot of compassion and embodiedness and empathy.
It's balance.
So I like to lead with both of those things because they're both important.
I love it. I'm here for the balance.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Right. Well, until next time, don't forget your spoon. All guests featured or mentioned in this podcast will be listed for your convenience. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to My Spoonie Sisters and follow My Spoonie Sisters on Instagram for updates on new episodes and more. We eagerly look forward to speaking and hearing from all our Spoonies. Disclaimer: while we are not doctors or healthcare practitioners, we want to assure you that this podcast is a credible source of information. It's based on our guests' personal experiences and the strategies we've found effective for ourselves. However, everyone's body is unique, and what works for one person may not work for another. If you have any health-related questions, it's always best to consult your primary doctor or rheumatologist. Remember, our goal at My Spoonie Sisters is to connect people and provide them with the support and tools they need to live better lives.